Hi, it's V. Before we begin tonight's episode, did you know that 18% of the population suffers from anxiety, but only 37% of those receive treatment? Make it easy for yourself with BetterHelp Online Counseling. BetterHelp is available worldwide and offers 4 communication modes: text, chat, phone, and video. Start communicating in under 24 hours. Snoozecast listeners get 10% off your first month with discount code Snoozecast. And if you sign up through our link, you're also helping support our show. So why not get started tonight? Press pause or make a reminder to check it out tomorrow. Go to betterhelp.com/snoozecast. Simply fill out a questionnaire to help them assess your needs and get matched with a counselor you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/snoozecast. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to Snoozecast, the podcast designed to help you fall asleep. Find us on snoozecast.com and follow us on social media and wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode is supported by Little Terriers with Big Hearts. Tonight, by listener request, we'll read the opening to Greyfriars Bobby, a 1912 novel by Eleanor Atkinson, based on the true story of the dog Greyfriars Bobby. This novel is written from the point of view of the dog, Bobby, and uses Scottish dialogue, as the novel is set in Edinburgh, Scotland. The book is written from the mind of a dog, which makes everyday events strange. The opening line references a church clock as a time gun, for example. Let's get cozy. Close your eyes. Relax your body into the softness of your bed. Now, take a few deep breaths. When the time gun boomed from Edinburgh Castle, Bobby gave a startled yelp. He was only a little country dog, the very youngest and smallest and shaggiest of Skye Terriers. Bred on a heathery slope of the Pentland Hills, where the loudest sound was the bark of a collie or the tinkle of a sheep bell. That morning, he had come to the weekly market with Auld Jock, a farm laborer, and the grass market of the Scottish capital lay in the narrow valley at the southern base of Castle Craig. 200 feet above it, the time gun was mounted in the half-moon battery on an overhanging, crescent-shaped ledge of rock. In any part of the city, the report of the 1 o'clock gun was sufficiently alarming. But in the grass market, it was an earth-rending explosion directly overhead. It needed to be heard, but once there to be registered on even a little dog's brain. Bobby heard it many times, and he never failed to yelp a sharp protest at the outrage to his ears. But, as the gunshot was always followed by a certain happy event, it started in his active little mind a train of pleasant associations. In Bobby's day of youth, and that was in 1858, when Queen Victoria was a happy wife and mother, with all her bairns about her knees in Windsor or Balmoral, the grass market of Edinburgh was still a bit of the Middle Ages, as picturesquely decaying and Gothic as German Nuremberg. Beside the classic corn exchange, it had no modern buildings. North and south, along its greatest length, the sunken quadrangle was faced by tall, old, timber-fronted houses of stone, plastered like swallows' nests to the rocky slopes behind them. Across the eastern end, where the valley suddenly narrowed to the ravine-like street of the Cowgate, the market was spanned by the lofty, crowded arches of George IV Bridge. This high-hung, viaduct thoroughfare that carried a double line of buildings within its parapet leaped the gorge from the tall, old Gothic rookeries on High Street Ridge, just below the castle esplanade. It cleared the roofs of the tallest, oldest houses that swarmed up the steep banks from the Cowgate and ran on, by easy descent, to the main gateway of Greyfriars Kirkyard at the lower top of the southern rise. Greyfriars' two kirks formed together under one continuous roof, a long, low, buttressed building without tower or spire. The new kirk was of Queen Anne's day, but the old kirk was built before ever the Pilgrims set sail for America. It had been but one of several sacred buildings, set in a monastery garden that sloped pleasantly to the open valley of the grass market and looked up the castle heights unhindered. In Bobby's day, this garden had shrunk to a long, narrow, high-piled burying ground that extended from the rear of the line of buildings that fronted on the market, up the slope, across the hilltop, and to where the land began to fall away again, down the Bergmoor. From the grass market, kirk and kirkyard lay hidden behind and above the crumbling grandeur of noble halls and mansions that had fallen to the grimmest tenements of Edinburgh's slums. From the end of the bridge approach, there was a glimpse of massive walls, of pointed windows, and of monumental tombs through a double-leafed gate of wrought iron that was alcoved and wedged in between the ancient guild hall of the candlemakers and a row of prosperous little shops in Greyfriars Place. A rock-rimmed quarry pit in the very heart of old Edinburgh, the grass market was a place of historic echoes. The yelp of a little dog there would scarce seem worthy of record. More in harmony with its stirring history was the report of the time gun. At 1 o'clock every day, there was a puff of smoke high up in the blue or gray or squally sky, then a deafening crash and a backfire fusillade of echoes. The oldest frequenter of the market never got used to it. On Wednesday, as the shot broke across the babble of shrill bargaining, every man in the place jumped, and not one was quicker of recovery than wee Bobby. Instantly ashamed, as an intelligent little dog who knew the import of the gun should be, Bobby denied his alarm in a tiny pink yawn of boredom. Then he went briskly about his urgent business of finding Auld Jock. The market was closed. In 5 minutes, the great open space was as empty of living men as Greyfriars Kirkyard on a weekday. Drovers and hostlers disappeared at once into the cheap and noisy entertainment of the White Hart Inn that fronted the market and set its squalid back against Castle Rock. Farmers rapidly deserted it for the clean country. Dwellers in the tenements darted up winds and blind closes climbing twisting turnpike stairs to windy roosts under the gables, or they scuttled through noble doors into foul courts and hallways. Beggars and pickpockets swarmed under the arches of the bridge to swell the evil-smelling human river that flowed at the dark and slimy bottom of the Cowgate. A chill November wind tore at the creaking iron cross of the Knights of St. John on the highest gable of the temple tenements that turned its decaying back on the kirkyard of the Greyfriars. Low clouds were tangled and torn on the castle battlements. A few horses stood about, munching oats from feed boxes. Flocks of sparrows fluttered down from timbered galleries and rocky ledges to feast on scattered grain. Swallows wheeled in wide, descending spirals from mud villages under the cornices to catch flies. Rats scurried out of holes and gleaned in the deserted corn exchange, and round the empty marketplace raced the frantic little terrier in search of Auld Jock. Bobby knew, as well as any man, that it was the dinner hour. With the time gun, it was Auld Jock's custom to go up to a snug little restaurant that was patronized chiefly by the decent poor small shopkeepers, clerks, tenant farmers, and medical students living in cheap lodgings in Greyfriars Place. There, in ye old Greyfriars dining rooms, owned by Mr. John Trail, and 4 doors beyond the kirkyard gate, was a cozy little inglenook that Auld Jock and Bobby had come to look upon as their own. At its back, above a recessed oaken settle and table, a tiny paned window looked up and over a retaining wall into the ancient place of the dead. The view of the heaped up and crowded mounds and thickets of old slabs and thought stones, girt all about by time-stained monuments and vaults, and shut in on the north and east by the backs of shops and lofty slum tenements, could not be said to be cheerful. It suited Auld Jock, however, for what mind he had was of a melancholy turn. From his place on the floor, between his master's hobnailed boots, Bobby could not see the kirkyard, but it would not, in any case, have depressed his spirits. He did not know the face of death, and, a merry little ruffian of a terrier, he was ready for any adventure. On the stone gate pillar was a notice in plain English that no dogs were permitted in Greyfriars. As well as if he could read, Bobby knew that the kirkyard was forbidden ground. He had learned that by bitter experience. Once, when the little wicket gate that held the 2 tall leaves ajar by day chanced to be open, he had joyously chased a cat across the graves and over the western wall onto the broad green lawn of Harrow's Hospital. There the little dog's escapade bred other mischief, for Harrow's Hospital was not a hospital at all, in the modern English sense of being a refuge for the sick. Built and christened in a day when Stuart King reigned in Holyrood Palace, and French was spoken in the Scottish court, Harrow's was a splendid pile of a charity school, all towers and battlements, and cheerful color and countless beautiful windows. Endowed by a beruffled and doubleted goldsmith, Jinglin Georgie Harrow, who had, Nay brave laddie o Isain, it was devoted to the care and education of pure orphan and fatherless boys. There it had stood for more than 2 centuries in a spacious park, like the country seat of a lowland laird, but hemmed in by sordid markets and swarming slums. The region round about furnished an unfailing supply of pure orphan and fatherless boys, who were as light-hearted and irresponsible as Bobby. Hundreds of the Harrah's ladies were out in the noon recess, playing cricket and leapfrog, when Bobby chased that unlucky cat over the kirkyard wall. He could go no farther himself, but the laddies took up the pursuit, yelling like Highland clans of old in a foray across the border. The unholy din disturbed the sacred peace of the kirkyard. Bobby dashed back, barking furiously, in pure exuberance of spirits. He tumbled gaily over grassy hummocks, frisked saucily around terrifying old mausoleums, wriggled under the most enticing of low-set table tombs, and sprawled, exhausted, but still happy and noisy, at Old Jock's feet. It was a scandalous thing to happen in any kirkyard. The angry caretaker was instantly out of his little stone lodge by the gate, and taking Old Jock sharply to task for Bobby's misbehavior. The pious old shepherd, shocked himself and publicly disgraced, stood, bonnet in hand, humbly apologetic. Seeing that his master was getting the worst of it, Bobby rushed into the fray, an animated little muff of pluck and fury, and nipped the caretaker's shins. There was a howl of pain, and a maced Micty word that made the ancient tombs stand aghast. Master and dog were hustled outside the gate and into a rabble of jeering slum gamin. What a to-do about a miserable cat? To Bobby there was no logic at all in the denouement to this swift, exciting drama. But he understood Old Jock's shame and displeasure perfectly. Good-tempered as he was, gay and clever, the little dog took his punishment meekly, and he remembered it. Thereafter, he passed the kirkyard gate decorously. If he saw a cat that needed harrying, he merely licked his little red chops, the outward sign of a desperate self-control. And, a true sport, he bore no malice toward the caretaker. During that first summer of his life, Bobby learned many things. He learned that he might chase rabbits, squirrels, and moorfowl, and seagulls and whops that came up to feed in plowed fields. Rats and mice around dairy were legitimate prey, but he learned that he must not annoy sheep and sheepdogs, nor cattles, horses, and chickens. And he discovered that, unless he hung close to Old Jock's heels, his freedom was in danger from a wee lassie who adored him. He was no lady's lapdog. From the barony's soft cosseting, he aye fled to Old Jock and the rough hospitality of the sheepfold. Being exact opposites in temperaments, but alike in tastes, Bobby and Old Jock were inseparable. In the quiet corner of Mr. Trail's crowded dining room, they spent the one idle hour of the week together, happily. Bobby had the leavings of a herring or haddie, for a rough little Skye will eat anything from smoked fish to moorfowl eggs, and he had the tidbit of a farthing bone to worry at his leisure. Old Jock smoked his cutty pipe, gazed at the fire or into the kirkyard and meditated on nothing in particular. In some strange way that no dog could understand, Bobby had been separated from Old Jock that November morning. The tenant of Caldbray Farm had driven the cart in himself, and that was unusual. Immediately he had driven out again, leaving Old Jock behind, and that was quite outside Bobby's brief experience of life. Beguiled to the lofty and coveted driver's seat where, with lolling tongue, he could view this interesting world between the horse's ears, Bobby had been spirited out of the city and carried all the way down and up to the hilltop toll bar of Fairmill Head. It could not occur to his loyal little heart that this treachery was planned for, stanch little Democrat that he was, that the farmer was really his owner and that he could not follow a humbler master of his own choosing. He might have been carried to the distant farm and shut safely in the byre with the cows for the night, but for an incautious remark of the farmer. With the first scent of the native heather, the horse quickened his pace, and, at sight of the purple slopes of the Pentlands looming homeward, a fond thought at the back of the man's mind very naturally took shape in speech. Bobby, the wee lassie will be at the top of the brae to race ye hame." Bobby pricked his drop ears. Within a narrow limit, and concerning familiar things, the understanding of human speech by these intelligent little terriers is very truly remarkable. At mention of the wee lassie, he looked behind for his rough old friend and unfailing refuge. All Jock's absence discovered, Bobby promptly dropped from the seat of honor and from the cart tail, sniffed the smoke of Edinburgh town, and faced right about. To the farmer's peremptory call, he returned the spicy repartee of a cheerful bark. It was as much as to say, "Dinna fash yourself, I ken what I'm about." After an hour's hard run back over the dipping and rising country road and a long quarter circuit of the city, Bobby found the high-walled, winding way into the west end of the grass market. To a human being afoot there was a shorter cut, but the little dog could only retrace the familiar route of the farm carts. It was a notable feat for a small creature whose tufted legs were not more than 6 inches in length, whose thatch of long hair almost swept the roadway and caught at every burr and bramble, and who was still so young that his nose could not be said to be educated. In the marketplace he ran here and there through the crowd, hopefully investigating narrow closes that were mere rifts and precipices of buildings, nosing outside stairs, doorways, stables, bridge arches, standing carts, and even hobnailed boots. He yelped at the crash of the gun, but it was another matter altogether that set his little heart to palpitating with alarm. It was the dinner hour, and where was Old Jock? Ah, a happy thought, his master had gone to dinner. A human friend would have resented the idea of such base desertion and insult, but in a little dog's heart of trust there is no room for suspicion. The thought simply lent wings to Bobby's tired feet. As the marketplace emptied, he chased at the heels of laggards, up the crescent-shaped rise of Candlemaker's Row, and straight on to the familiar dining rooms. Through the forest of table and chair and human legs, he made his way to the back, to find a soldier from the castle, in smart red coat and polished boots, lounging in Old Jock's inglenook. Bobby stood stock still for a shocked instant. Then he howled dismally and bolted for the door. Mr. John Trail, the smooth-shaven, hatchet-faced proprietor, standing midway in shirt sleeves and white apron, caught the flying terrier between his legs and gave him a friendly clap on the side. "Did you come by your ain self, with a farthing in your silky purse here to buy a bone, Bobby? Where's Old Jock?" A fear may be crowded back into the mind and stoutly denied so long as it is not named. At the good landlord's very natural question, "Where's Old Jock?" there was the shape of the little dog's fear that he had lost his master. With a whimpering cry, he struggled free. Out of the door he went like a shot. He tumbled down the steep curve and doubled on his tracks around the marketplace. At his onslaught, the sparrows rose like brown leaves on a gust of wind and drifted down again. A cold mist veiled the castle heights. From the stone crown of the ancient Cathedral of St. Giles on High Street floated the melody of the Blue Bells of Scotland. No day was too bleak for the bell-ringer MacLeod to climb the shaking ladder in the windy tower and play the music bells during the hour that Edinburgh dined. Bobby forgot to dine that day, first in his distracted search and then in his joy of finding his master. For, all at once, in the very strangest place, in the very strangest way, Bobby came upon Old Jock, a rat scurrying out from a foul and narrow passage that gave to the rear of the White Hart Inn, pointed the little dog to a nook hitherto undiscovered by his curious nose. Hidden away between the noisy tavern and the grim island crag was the old cockfighting pit of a ruder day. There, in a broken-down carrier's cart, abandoned among the nameless abominations of public-house refuse, Old Jock lay huddled in his great coat of hodden grey and his shepherd's plaid. On a bundle of clothing tied in a tartan kerchief for a pillow, he lay very still and breathing heavily. Bobby barked as if he would burst his lungs. He barked so long, so loud, and so furiously, running round and round the cart and under it and yelping at every turn, that a slatternly scullery maid opened a door and angrily bade him no, to thee folk wis the bladderin. Old Jock she did not see at all in the murky pit, or, if she saw him, thought him some drunken foreign sailor from Leith Harbor. When she went in, she slammed the door and lighted the gas. Whether from instinct of protection of his helpless master in that foul and hostile place, or because barking had proved to be of no use, Bobby sat back on his haunches and considered this strange, disquieting thing. It was not like Old Jock to sleep in the daytime, or so soundly, at any time, that barking would not awaken him. A clever and resourceful dog, Bobby crouched back against the farthest wall, took a running leap to the top of the low boots, dug his claws into the stout, home-knitted stockings, and scrambled up over Old Jock's legs into the cart. In an instant, he poked his little black mop of a wet muzzle into his master's face and barked once, sharply, in his ear. To Bobby's delight, Old Jock sat up and blinked his eyes. The old eyes were brighter, the grizzled face redder than was natural. But such matters were quite outside of the little dog's ken. It was a dazed moment before the man remembered that Bobby should not be there. He frowned down at the excited little creature, who was wagging satisfaction from his nose tip to the end of his crested tail, in a puzzled effort to remember why. Bobby!" His tone was one of vague reproof. "Nay, doe, you're fair satisfied with your ain self." Bobby's feathered tail drooped, but it still quivered, all ready to wag again at the slightest encouragement. Old Jock stared at him stupidly, his dizzy head in his hands. A very tired, very draggled little dog. Bobby dropped beside his master, panting, subdued by the reproach, but happy. His soft eyes, veiled by the silvery fringe that fell from his high forehead, were deep brown pools of affection. Old Jock forgot, by and by, that Bobby should not be there, and felt only the comfort of his companionship. "Weel, Bobby," he began again, uncertainly, and then, because his Scotch peasant reticence had been quite broken by Bobby's shameless devotion, so that he told the little dog many things that he cannily concealed from humankind. He confided the strange weakness and dizziness in the head that had overtaken him. "Old Jock is just fair silly the day, bonny wee laddie." Down came a shaking, hot old hand in a rough caress, and up a gallant young tail to wave like a banner. All was right with the little dog's world again. But it was plain, even to Bobby, that something had gone wrong with old Jock. It was the man who wore the air of a culprit.